You are sitting in the car. The engine is off, the house is right there, and you have not moved for 11 minutes. Nothing hard happened today. You still cannot make yourself open the door. This has a name: the vigilance decrement. When you watch for something that rarely happens, your ability to spot it falls apart on a schedule, whether you care or not. You think that was a social battery running out. It wasn't. It was a watch. But there is a second thing, found in 1979, and it is the reason an easy day among people costs more than a hard day alone. Everything after this is built on it. Go back through the day, not the hard parts. There weren't any. 9:40 in the morning, someone said good morning in a slightly different tone than yesterday, and you checked it. 11:15, your manager typed for 4 seconds in the chat and then stopped, and you watched the 3 dots disappear. 1 o'clock, at lunch, a person across the table laughed half a beat late, and you filed it. 4:30, someone said fine when you asked, and you ran the word through everything you know about how they say fine. None of that was work. None of it went on a list. If somebody asked what you did today, what would you even say? Not much. And you would be telling the truth. Then you drove home. And somewhere between the office car park and your own street, the thing that had been running all day ran out of anything to run on, and it did not so much switch off as fall over. The circumstances never changed. Same job, same people, same commute you did on the day you came home fine. What changed was how long the watch had been open. In 1948, a British psychologist named Norman Mackworth published a paper called The Breakdown of Vigilance During Prolonged Visual Search. The Royal Air Force had a problem. Radar operators were missing things. Not at the start of a shift, near the end of it, and the RAF wanted to know how long a watch should be. So Mackworth built a clock. A plain face, no numbers, one black pointer stepping round once a second, and at rare irregular moments the pointer took a double step instead of a single one. That double step was the whole job. Press the button when you see it. Sit there for 2 hours. People are good at this for about half an hour. Then they are measurably worse. Detection dropped by 10 to 15% inside the first 30 minutes, and kept sliding for the 90 minutes after that. Nobody had stopped trying. Nobody was tired in the ordinary sense. The pointer had not become harder to see. That is the vigilance decrement, and it has been reproduced for nearly 80 years. On radar screens, on airport baggage scanners, in air traffic control towers, and in the seat of a long-haul truck at 3 in the morning. Now the part that matters for you, because there is an obvious explanation and it is wrong. The obvious explanation is boredom. The task is dull, attention wanders, performance drops. In 2003, Rebecca Greer, Joel Warm, and their colleagues tested exactly that, measuring mental workload and stress while people set a vigilance task. If watching were an empty activity, the numbers would come back low. They came back at the top of the scale. Their conclusion was blunt. The decrement reflects the limits of effortful attention, not mindlessness. Warm, Raja Parasuraman, and Gerald Matthews reviewed the whole field in 2008 and gave their paper a title that reads like a correction, because it is one. Vigilance requires hard mental work and is stressful. And the story you reached for instead, the battery, is a folk version of something psychology itself has had to back away from. The idea was called ego depletion, a shared tank of willpower that drains with use. For 20 years, it was one of the most cited findings in the field. Then in 2016, Martin Hager and his colleagues ran it across 23 laboratories at once, with the method agreed in advance so nobody could adjust it afterwards. The effect came out at essentially zero. There is no tank. So whatever emptied today, it was not that. So here is 1979. Raja Parasuraman published a paper in Science that asked a narrower question about the vigilance decrement than anyone had asked before. Not how long attention can hold. What specifically makes it collapse? He found 2 conditions. The first is event rate, which is simply how much material streams past you that has to be checked and thrown away. The second one matters more, and nobody sees it coming. It is whether the thing you are comparing against is in front of you or inside you. Psychologists call these simultaneous and successive tasks. In a simultaneous task, the standard is right there on the screen. This shape, next to that shape, are they the same? In a successive task, there is no standard on the screen. You have to hold what normal looks like in working memory and compare every new arrival against the copy in your head and keep that copy alive while you do it. Sensitivity holds up reasonably well in the first kind. In the second, it falls apart. So what were you actually doing all day? Nobody showed you their baseline face. Nobody set a reference tone down beside the tone they used. There was no card taped to the wall reading "This is what she sounds like when she is fine." Every single read you made today was successive. A small change in a person measured against a version of that person you were carrying in your head and updating and carrying again. That is the second thing. The exhaustion is not coming from what you noticed. It is coming from the fact that you had nothing to check it against. And be careful here, because this is the exact point where these explanations usually cheat. Mackworth measured a pointer on a clock face. He did not measure a lunch table. What connects the two is a separate body of work. John Cacioppo and Louise Hockley, writing in 2009, showed that sustained monitoring of the social world for signs of threat measurably degrades attention, memory, and executive control. The vigilance decrement is real in a room full of people. It just isn't made of radar. There is no ancient story underneath this one, and no childhood one either, which is unusual enough to say out loud. This is not a wound. It is a specification. Attention has a fixed budget and one narrow channel of working memory to spend it through. Holding a standard in that channel and refreshing it against every new arrival is one of the most expensive operations the whole system can run. And unlike almost everything else your brain does, it cannot be automated away. A skill gets cheaper with practice. A watch does not. 20 years in the same job does not make the room cost less to read. Picture a torch with a battery you cannot check. It throws one narrow beam. It is bright enough for one thing at a time. And the room you have been asked to search is mostly empty, which is the entire point, because that is why the search takes hours. Now hold that torch on an empty room for 8 hours and tell yourself you did nothing. The beam narrows. It always narrows. And it narrows fastest when you are searching for something you can only describe from memory. It is worth defending the design before condemning it. An alarm that only went off for real problems would have to know, in advance, which face and which pause were going to matter. Nothing can know that. The only way to catch a rare signal is to check everything that is not one, thousands of times, for hours, and be right about almost all of it. And you caught things today. A tone that meant back off. A silence that meant say the next sentence carefully. A look that quietly saved a conversation you then never had to have. None of it went on a list, because prevented problems never do. Your attention did the arithmetic correctly. It was handed a room with no reference card in it, and asked to run a successive discrimination for 8 hours, which gives you something to do, and it isn't rest. First, the diagnostic. Tonight, do not count the hard things. Count the standards. How many people did you hold a normal version of in your head today, and check every new signal against? 3 is a light day. 9 is why the car happened. Then the fix, and it comes straight out of Parasermon's distinction. The expensive task is successive. The cheap one is simultaneous. So put the standard back on the screen. In practice, that means asking the plain question instead of inferring the answer. Are you annoyed with me? Did that land badly? Is this a bad time? One direct question closes a monitoring task that would otherwise have run in the background all afternoon. It feels like the socially expensive move. It is the cheap one. And when you take a break, take one that closes a watch instead of opening another. Scrolling a feed of faces is not rest. It is the same job on a smaller screen. So the car is not a failure of will. It is the vigilance decrement, running out in the only place today where nothing had to be read. You will sit there again this week. When you do, you will know what the 11 minutes are for. The engine is off, the house is right there, and the beam is finally allowed to widen.